in the quiet space between night and dawn, when the world is still wrapped in darkness and the cold air settles like a thin veil over the fields, we step back into a time where life was shaped not by choice but by necessity. A time when the vast majority of people in Europe lived as commoners, bound to the land, to the seasons, and to the unbroken rhythm of work that defined every day. And as the first light touches the horizon, we begin to see their world unfold before us, a world both familiar and distant. Harsh yet deeply human. Imagine a landscape where small wooden houses cluster together like weary travelers seeking warmth, where smoke rises slowly from thatched roofs, where narrow dirt paths wind between fields that stretch far beyond the eye. And in these fields generations have lived and died, leaving behind no monuments, no written records, only the faint imprint of footsteps in the soil. And it is here, in this quiet and often forgotten world, that the story of the medieval commoner begins for most people in medieval Europe. Life was not shaped by grand battles or royal courts, but by the simple struggle to survive, and survival meant labor from the moment the sun rose until it sank again. It meant hands roughened by tools, backs bent from carrying loads, and a constant awareness that the harvest, the weather, or a single illness could change everything. And yet within this struggle there was a rhythm, a sense of belonging, a connection to land and family that formed the backbone of medieval society. Inside a commoner's home, and you find a single room shared by an entire family. The air thick with the scent of smoke and earth, the floor packed hard beneath bare feet, a small fire glowing in the hearth, offering just enough warmth to push back the cold, and here life unfolds in its simplest form. Meals of coarse bread and porridge, tools hanging from wooden beams, children sleeping close together on straw-filled sacks, and the quiet murmur of voices blending with the crackle of the fire. Outside the door, the world is shaped by the seasons, spring bringing hope and planting, summer demanding endless labor, autumn offering the fragile reward of harvest, and winter testing every family's strength. And through each season, the commoner works not for wealth or comfort, but for survival, knowing that a poor harvest could mean hunger, knowing that sickness could sweep through the village without warning, knowing that life is fragile and often short, yet, despite the hardships, there is beauty here. In the golden light of early morning spreading across the fields, in the laughter of children chasing each other between rows of crops, in the shared meals where families gather close, in the songs sung quietly during long hours of work, and in the deep sense of community that binds neighbors together. Because in this world, no one survives alone. This is the story of the medieval commoner, not the story of kings or knights or castles, but the story of the people who formed the true heart of medieval Europe, the people whose hands built the world, whose labor fed entire kingdoms, whose lives were shaped by resilience, routine, and an unspoken strength passed down through generations. And as we step deeper into their world, we begin to understand not only how they lived, but how they endured, how they found meaning in the ordinary, and how their quiet lives shaped the course of history in ways often overlooked. So, let us walk with them now, through fields heavy with morning dew, through narrow village lanes, through the dim glow of a hearth fire, and into the daily life of those who lived not for glory, but for survival, those whose stories deserve to be remembered, those who remind us that history is not only written by the powerful, but lived by the many. In the pale blue quiet of early morning, before the first rooster calls, and before the sun has even begun to think about rising, a child enters a world shaped by hardship and routine, a world where life is fragile and survival is never guaranteed. And from the moment of birth, the child is bound to the land, to the seasons, to the unbroken chain of labor that stretches back through generations. And the child's first breath is taken in a small timber house where smoke hangs low in the air, where the scent of damp wool and earth fills the single room, and where the warmth of the hearth is precious, because the cold outside presses against the walls like a living thing. The child's arrival is met with relief more than celebration, because childbirth is dangerous in this time, and every mother knows that she walks a narrow path between life and death, and every family knows that not all infants survive their first days, and the child's mother is one of the fortunate ones. For many women die in childbirth, as many as 1 in 10 in some villages, and nearly half of all children will not live to see their 5th year, taken by fever, infection, hunger, or the simple cruelty of chance. And so when the child cries, the sound is a blessing, a fragile promise that life continues. The house is small, a single room shared by the entire family, with a low ceiling that traps smoke and a dirt floor that stays cold even in summer. And the child sleeps on a straw-filled sack beside siblings who shift and murmur in the darkness, listening to the wind push against the walls, listening to the creak of the wooden door, listening to the distant howl of a dog or the soft bleating of a goat. And in these sounds the child finds both comfort and unease. Comfort in the familiarity of family close by, unease in the knowledge that the world outside is harsh and unforgiving. From the earliest days the child is surrounded by work, not in the sense of tasks assigned, but in the sense of life itself being labor. And the child watches their mother rise before dawn to stir the embers back to life, blowing gently into the ashes until a faint glow becomes a flame. Watches her measure grain with careful hands, because there is never enough to waste. Watches her wrap cloth around her hands before lifting the heavy iron pot. And the child sees how their father steps outside into the cold to check the animals, to feel the soil, to judge the weather with a glance at the sky. And though the child does not yet understand the meaning of these actions, they feel the weight of them, the necessity, the unspoken truth that survival depends on constant effort. As soon as the child can walk steadily, small tasks are given, not as lessons but as necessities. And the child carries a wooden bowl to the stream, gathers fallen twigs for the fire, holds a lantern while the adults work. And each task is met with quiet acceptance, because in this world, work is not something to resist. It is simply what life is. And the child feels pride when a sibling nods approvingly, or when a parent says nothing at all. For silence often means the task was done well enough. The child spends long hours outside, even in the cold months, following older siblings into the fields, watching them pull weeds, scatter seeds, or guide the plow behind a tired ox. And the child learns to read the land through observation, noticing how the soil clumps differently after rain, how the wind shifts before a storm, how the birds fall silent when the weather is about to turn. And these small observations become part of the child's understanding, shaping their sense of the world long before they can articulate it. Hunger is a familiar companion, not always sharp, but always present, a quiet ache that comes and goes depending on the season. And the child learns early that food is precious, that a crust of bread must be eaten slowly, that porridge must be scraped from the bowl so none is lost, that vegetables from the garden are gifts of the earth and must be treated with respect. And on rare days, when a rabbit is caught or a chicken is slaughtered, the child watches the adults divide the meat carefully, making sure every piece is used, even the bones boiled for broth. And the child feels a deep gratitude for these moments of abundance. Cold shapes the child's memories as much as hunger, for the winters are long and unforgiving, and the house offers little protection from the wind that slips through the gaps in the walls. And the child's fingers grow numb while carrying water from the frozen stream, their breath forming clouds in the air as they hurry back inside. And at night, the family huddles close around the fire, sharing blankets, sharing warmth, sharing the quiet hope that the winter will not take too much from them this year. Because winter is a thief that steals livestock, steals crops, steals lives. And every family knows someone who did not survive the cold month sickness visits often, moving through the household like an unwelcome guest. And the child sees how illness changes everything, how chores shift, how voices soften, how fear settles into the corners of the room. And the child remembers nights spent listening to a sibling cough, listening to their mother whisper prayers, listening to the fire crackle as if trying to hold the darkness at bay. And though the child does not fully grasp the fragility of life, they sense it deeply, understanding that each day is uncertain, that each breath is something to be grateful for. And they learn that fevers can take a life in a single night, that infected wounds can turn deadly, that even a simple cold can become something far worse, despite the hardships. The child finds moments of quiet joy, moments that shine brightly against the backdrop of labor and scarcity. Moments like running barefoot through tall grass in the brief warmth of summer, or watching fireflies dance above the fields at dusk, or hearing a traveling peddler tell stories in the village square, stories of distant lands and strange creatures, stories that make the child's imagination stretch beyond the boundaries of their small world. And though these moments are fleeting, they linger in the child's heart, offering a gentle balance to the weight of daily life. The child also learns through mistakes, through dropping a bucket and spilling precious water, through letting a chicken slip from their grasp, through stepping on a tool left in the wrong place. And each mistake is met not with anger, but with a quiet reminder, a steady hand guiding them back to the task. Because in this world, mistakes are expected, but they must be corrected quickly. For the margin between survival and loss is thin as the child grows. The tasks grow with them, becoming heavier, more demanding, more essential, and the child begins to feel the shift, begins to sense that they are no longer simply watching, but participating, no longer being guided, but expected to contribute. And this realization comes not through words, but through the way their father hands them a tool without explanation, through the way their mother trusts them to stir the pot without supervision, through the way siblings step aside and let them take on a task once considered too difficult. There is no ceremony to mark this transition, no celebration, no moment when someone says you are older now. Instead, the change happens quietly, naturally, like the slow turning of the seasons, and the child accepts it with the same calm acceptance that has shaped their entire life, understanding that growing older means carrying more weight, more responsibility, more of the burden that keeps the family standing, and so childhood fades gently, not with a sudden shift, but with a gradual blending into youth, a soft merging of observation and action, of learning and doing. And the child steps into this new stage of life with steady determination, shaped by the land, by the work, by the hardships endured, and by the quiet strength of a family bound together by necessity and love, ready to face the world, not because it is easy, but because it is the only world they have ever known. Youth arrives not as a sudden transformation, but as a slow unfolding, a quiet stretching of limbs and responsibilities. And the young person who once followed behind older siblings now walks beside them, sharing the weight of daily labor with a steadier step. And each morning begins long before the sun rises, with the faint glow of embers in the hearth and the cold breath of dawn pressing against their skin as they step outside into a world that demands their strength from the very first moment of the yell. Bathe the young person's hands, once small and clumsy, now move with practiced certainty, gripping tools worn smooth by generations, guiding the plow through stubborn soil, lifting buckets of water from the well, gathering bundles of firewood from the forest edge. And each task is performed not because someone orders it, but because the rhythm of life requires it. And the young person feels this rhythm in their muscles, in their breath, in the steady beat of their heart as they work from morning until dusk. And the land becomes a teacher far stricter than any human, offering lessons through hardship, through repetition, through the quiet pressure of necessity. The fields stretch out before them like an endless tapestry of earth and effort, and the young person learns to read the subtle language of the soil, noticing how it darkens after rain, how it cracks during drought, how it clings to their boots in heavy clumps during early spring. And they learn to judge the weather by the scent of the wind, by the movement of clouds, by the silence of birds. And these observations are not trivial, they are essential, because a single misjudgment can ruin a crop, and a ruined crop can mean hunger for the entire village. Their body grows stronger with each passing season, muscles forming from constant labor, shoulders broadening from lifting, legs thickening from walking miles across uneven ground, and their hands become rough and calloused, marked by blisters that break and heal and break again. And though the work is exhausting, there is a quiet pride in it, a sense of belonging to something larger than themselves, a sense that their effort keeps the family alive, and this pride becomes a steady companion, a source of strength during the hardest days. Food remains simple and scarce, and the young person learns to eat quickly during short breaks, savoring the warmth of porridge or the rare sweetness of a piece of fruit. And they learn to accept hunger as a normal part of life, a reminder that the harvest is never guaranteed. And they learn to ration food carefully, to stretch ingredients, to make broth from bones and stew from whatever vegetables survived the season. And they understand that every meal is the result of countless hours of labor, and that waste is a luxury no one can afford. As youth deepens, the young person begins to take on tasks that require more skill and judgment, such as repairing tools, tending livestock, or managing small sections of the field. And they learn to mend fences, to sharpen blades, to treat minor injuries in animals. And these skills are passed down through generations, taught not through formal instruction, but through watching, imitating, and slowly mastering the movements that keep the household functioning. And the young person feels a growing sense of competence, a sense that they are becoming someone the family can rely on. The village becomes a larger part of their world, and the young person begins to interact more with neighbors, sharing tools, exchanging labor, helping with harvests, and participating in communal tasks such as repairing roads or maintaining the village well. And through these interactions, they learn the unspoken rules of community life, the importance of cooperation, the necessity of mutual support, because no family can survive alone, and the village is a fragile network of shared burdens and shared hopes. And the young person begins to understand their place within this network. Festivals and holy days offer brief moments of relief from labor, and the young person experiences the rare joy of music, dancing, and laughter. And though these celebrations are simple, they shine brightly against the backdrop of daily hardship. And the young person feels a sense of connection to the village, to the land, to the cycle of seasons that shape every aspect of life. And these moments become cherished memories, reminders that even in a world of constant work, there is room for joy. And the young person carries these memories with them through the long months of toil. As the young person approaches early adulthood, new responsibilities emerge, responsibilities that carry greater weight and greater consequence. And they begin to assist in decisions about planting, harvesting, and managing resources. And they learn to calculate how much grain must be stored for winter, how much can be spared for trade, how much must be saved for seed. And these decisions are not taken lightly, because a single miscalculation can mean hunger or even starvation during the cold months. And the young person feels the gravity of these choices settling into their mind. Marriage becomes a topic of quiet discussion, not as a romantic ideal, but as a practical necessity. Because households need labor, families need alliances, and marriages among commoners are often arranged based on land. skills, and survival rather than affection. And the young person understands that choosing a partner means choosing someone who will share the burden of work, someone who will help raise children, someone who will stand beside them through sickness, hunger, and hardship. And though love may grow over time, it is not the foundation. Survival is. And the young person accepts this reality with the same calm acceptance that shapes every part of their life. Young person begins to notice the subtle shifts in how others treat them, how elders speak to them with more respect, how younger children look to them for guidance, how their parents rely on them more heavily. And these changes signal the transition into adulthood, a transition not marked by ceremony, but by responsibility, by the quiet acceptance that they are now a full contributor to the household. And this realization brings both pride and a deep sense of weight, because adulthood is not a destination. It is a burden carried every day. Sickness remains a constant threat, and the young person witnesses how illness can strike without warning, how a simple wound can become infected, how fever can take a life in a matter of days. And they learn basic remedies from herbs, learn to recognize signs of infection, learn to care for the sick with patience and hope, and they understand that life is fragile, that death is never far. And this awareness shapes their outlook, making them grateful for each day of health and strength. And they carry this awareness with them like a shadow. The young person also begins to understand the broader forces that shape their world, such as taxes owed to the local lord, tithes owed to the church, and obligations to work on the Lord's land during certain seasons. And they learn that their labor is not entirely their own, that a portion of everything they produce must be given away. And though this system feels unfair, it is the only system they have ever known, and they accept it with the same quiet endurance that defines their entire life, understanding that resistance is not an option for people of their station. As early adulthood settles in, the young person becomes a pillar of the household, capable of performing any task, capable of making decisions, capable of carrying the physical and emotional weight of daily survival. And they begin to dream not of escape or adventure, but of stability, of a good harvest, of healthy children, of a winter that is not too harsh. And these dreams are modest but deeply meaningful, shaped by the realities of medieval life, and the young person holds these dreams close, knowing that even small hopes can carry a person through the hardest days. And so youth fades into adulthood not with a sudden shift, but with a gradual deepening of responsibility, a quiet strengthening of character, a steady acceptance of the life that has always been theirs. And the young adult steps forward into the world with resilience forged through years of labor, with wisdom shaped by hardship, and with a sense of belonging to the land, the family, and the community that has raised them, ready to face whatever challenges the seasons may bring, knowing that their life, though simple and often difficult, is woven into the fabric of a world that depends on their strength. As the young adult steps deeper into the life expected of them, the world reveals itself with a clarity that childhood never allowed, and the quiet truths of medieval Europe settle into their understanding like stones placed one by one, shaping the weight they now carry, because youth in this time is not a season of freedom, but a sharpening of responsibility, a transition into a life where every action matters and every mistake has consequences that ripple through the household. The young adult learns that survival is a fragile achievement, for even though they have lived past childhood, something nearly half of all children never do, the dangers of adulthood are no less severe, and they hear stories whispered in the village of young men crushed beneath carts, of women taken by fever after childbirth, of neighbors who simply did not wake one morning. And they know that the average life expectancy hovers around 30 to 40 years, not because people cannot live longer, but because so many lives are cut short by disease, injury, or hunger, and this knowledge becomes a quiet companion, shaping their sense of time and purpose. Work dominates their days, and the young adult spends long hours in the fields, bending, lifting, pulling, carrying. And they learn that a commoner may work 12 or more hours during the busiest seasons, with only brief pauses for food or water, and the rhythm of their life is tied to the land in a way that leaves little room for rest. Because the land does not wait, the seasons do not pause, and the harvest will not forgive delay. And the young adult feels this truth in their bones as they rise before dawn and return home after dusk. Their body aching yet determined, their diet remains simple and repetitive, built around whatever the land can provide. And the young adult eats coarse rye bread, barley porridge, onions, beans, cabbage, and occasionally eggs or cheese if the animals are healthy. And meat is rare, often reserved for feast days or moments of celebration. And they learn that most commoners consume fewer calories than they burn, living in a constant state of mild hunger, and they understand that food is not a pleasure but a necessity, something to be stretched, rationed, and respected. Disease remains a constant threat, and the young adult witnesses how quickly illness can sweep through the village, how a simple cut can become infected, how fever can take a life in a matter of days. And they learn that childbirth remains one of the most dangerous moments in a woman's life, with as many as 1 in 10 women dying from complications. And they learn to fear the sound of coughing in the night, the sight of rashes on a child's skin, the smell of infection in a wound. And they understand that even the strongest can be brought low by sickness. The young adult becomes familiar with herbs and remedies, gathering plants like yarrow, sage, and chamomile, learning which leaves soothe fever, which roots ease pain, which poultices draw out infection. And though these remedies are not always effective, they offer a sense of control in a world where so much is uncertain. And the young adult takes comfort in the knowledge passed down through generations, knowing that sometimes a handful of herbs can mean the difference between life and death. Work extends beyond the fields, and the young adult helps repair thatched roofs, mend fences, dig drainage ditches, and maintain the communal oven. And through this shared labor, they learn the deep interdependence of village life, understanding that no family survives alone, that every household relies on the strength and goodwill of others, and that cooperation is as essential as food or shelter. And the young adult begins to see themselves not just as part of a family, but as part of a community bound together by necessity. Obligations imposed by those above them become clearer, and the young adult learns that the local lord demands taxes in the form of grain, labor, or livestock, and the church requires tithes, often 1/10 of whatever the family produces. And these demands weigh heavily on the young adult's mind, because they know that even in a good year, the margin between enough and not enough is narrow, and in a bad year, these obligations can push a family to the edge of starvation. And the young adult feels the quiet resentment that many commoners carry. Though they rarely speak it aloud, marriage becomes a practical concern. And the young adult understands that forming a household is not simply a matter of companionship, but a matter of survival. Because 2 people working together can manage more land, raise more animals, and support more children. And the young adult knows that children are both a blessing and a necessity, for they provide labor, ensure the continuation of the family line, and offer support in old age, though many will not survive childhood. And the young adult carries the weight of this knowledge with a mixture of hope and fear. Courtship is simple and shaped by necessity, and the young adult may meet a potential partner at the village well, at a festival, or while working in the fields. And conversations are brief, glances are subtle, and decisions are often made by families rather than individuals. And the young adult accepts this with quiet resignation, understanding that love may come later, or it may not, but partnership is essential regardless, despite the hardships. The young adult finds moments of quiet beauty. Moments when the sun sets over the fields in a blaze of gold. Moments when the first snow falls in soft silence. Moments when laughter fills the village during a feast day. Moments when a newborn animal takes its first breath. And these moments become small anchors of joy. Reminders that life, though difficult, is not without sweetness. And the young adult holds on to these moments with gratitude. And through all of this, the young adult grows not only in strength, but in understanding, learning to navigate the complexities of village life, the demands of the land, the expectations of family, and the uncertainties of survival, and they begin to see themselves as a vital part of the community, someone whose labor, decisions, and resilience shape the future of their household. And this realization brings both pride and a deep sense of responsibility, marking the true beginning of adulthood in a world where every day is earned through effort and endurance. As the years pass and the seasons turn again and again, the adult who once carried the weight of youth now feels time settling into their bones. And late adulthood arrives not with a single moment, but with a slow accumulation of aches, memories, and responsibilities. And the person who once rose before dawn with the strength of youth now rises with a soft stiffness in their joints. A reminder that decades of labor have shaped their body as surely as the plow shapes the soil. And the world around them begins to look different, not because it has changed, but because they have, the commoner in late adulthood, carries the weight of many seasons. And each season has left its mark. The long summers of harvest have carved deep lines around the eyes. The cold winters have stiffened the fingers. The countless hours of bending, lifting, and carrying have worn down the back. And though the body grows slower, the mind grows fuller, filled with memories of storms survived, harvests saved, children raised, and hardships endured. And these memories become a quiet source of wisdom for the younger generation, who now look to them for guidance. Reaching the age of 50 in medieval Europe is a rare achievement. For while some do live into their 60s or 70s, many are taken long before. And the commoner knows that they have outlived neighbors, friends, siblings, and perhaps even children, because disease, famine, and accidents claim lives without warning. And the knowledge of this fragility shapes their gratitude for each new morning, each warm fire, each shared meal, and each moment of peace. And they carry this gratitude like a small flame that warms them through the coldest days. Their role in the household changes as age settles into their bones. And though they may no longer guide the plow or carry heavy loads, they take on tasks that require patience rather than strength. Mending clothing by the hearth, repairing tools with careful hands, tending small animals, watching over grandchildren, and offering guidance to those who now carry the physical burdens they once bore. And in this shift, they find a new purpose, a new place within the family. One built not on muscle, but on memory. The older commoner becomes a keeper of knowledge, passing down lessons learned through decades of survival, teaching younger hands how to judge the soil, how to store grain safely, how to read the sky for signs of weather, how to treat minor wounds with herbs, and how to endure hardship with quiet resilience. And these teachings are not given in long speeches, but in small moments, in the way they correct a grip on a tool, in the way they explain the importance of timing during harvest, in the way they remind the young that patience is as important as strength, marriage, and family remain central even in old age. And the older adult watches their children form households of their own, watches grandchildren grow, watches the family expand and shift like the branches of a tree. And they feel pride in knowing that their labor helped create this lineage. And yet, they also feel the quiet sorrow of knowing that not all children survive to adulthood, because childhood mortality remains high, and many families lose little ones to fever, infection, or hunger. And the older commoner carries these losses in their heart. Remembering each child who did not live long enough to see the world, the older adult also carries the memory of childbirth, a moment that remains one of the most dangerous events in a woman's life, with as many as 1 in 10 women dying from complications. And the older women of the village often serve as midwives, guiding younger mothers through the process, offering herbs, prayers, and steady hands. And they know the risks intimately, having seen both joy and tragedy unfold in the same small room. And this knowledge deepens their respect for the cycle of life-death in medieval Europe, comes in many forms. And the older commoner has seen them all: death from fever that sweeps through the village in a matter of days, death from infected wounds that begin as small cuts and end in agony, death from childbirth, death from famine when the harvest fails, death from accidents in the fields, crushed beneath carts or trampled by animals, death from war when soldiers pass through the region, taking food, taking lives, taking whatever they wish. And the older adult knows that death is not a distant concept, but a constant presence, a shadow that walks beside every person from birth to old age. Despite this, the older commoner does not live in fear, because fear is a luxury they cannot afford. Instead, they live with acceptance, with the understanding that life is fragile and precious, and they find comfort in the routines that have shaped their entire existence: the tending of the fire, the mending of clothes, the telling of stories, the watching of grandchildren play in the dust outside the door. And these small moments become the treasures of old age, moments that shine brightly against the backdrop of hardship. The body continues to change, and the older adult feels the slow weakening of muscles, the trembling of hands, the stiffness of joints, the fading of eyesight, and the dulling of hearing. And they know that their days of heavy labor are behind them. And though this brings a sense of loss, it also brings a sense of peace, because they have earned their rest. And the younger generation now carries the burdens they once bore, and the older adult watches with pride as their children and grandchildren take on the tasks of survival. The village looks to them with respect, because age is rare and therefore honored, and the older commoner becomes someone others seek for advice, for stories, for guidance. And though they may not hold formal power, their influence is felt in the way decisions are made, in the way disputes are settled, in the way traditions are preserved, and their presence becomes a stabilizing force in a world that often feels uncertain. Faith deepens with age, not necessarily through ritual, but through reflection. And the older commoner spends more time in quiet prayer, more time contemplating the mysteries of life and death, more time seeking comfort in the belief that suffering has meaning. And the church becomes a place of solace, a place where the older adult can rest their worries, light a candle, and feel connected to something larger than themselves. And this faith offers a sense of peace as the end of life draws nearer. Winter becomes harder with each passing year, the cold settling deeper into the bones, the nights feeling longer, the fire needing to be tended more carefully. And the older commoner knows that winter is the season that takes the most lives, and they prepare for it with a mixture of caution and acceptance, ensuring that blankets are mended, that firewood is stacked high, that food is stored safely, and that the family is ready for the long months of darkness and cold. As the older commoner watches the younger generation take on the tasks they once performed, they feel a mixture of pride and melancholy. Pride in seeing their children and grandchildren grow strong and capable, melancholy in knowing that their own strength is fading. And yet there is comfort in this passing of roles, because it means the family will continue, the land will continue, the rhythm of life will continue. And the older adult finds peace in knowing that they have done their part when death finally approaches. It often comes softly, in sleep, or after a brief illness, or during a quiet moment by the fire, and the family gathers around, offering comfort, prayers, and presence. And though grief is heavy, it is also gentle, because the older commoner lived a full life by the standards of their time. A life shaped by labor, by love, by hardship, by endurance, and by the quiet strength that carried them through decades of uncertainty. And so the story of the medieval commoner reaches its final chapter, not with grandeur or spectacle, but with the same quiet dignity that shaped every moment of their life. And their memory lives on in the hands of those who continue the work, in the fields they tended, in the tools they repaired, in the stories they told, and in the unbroken chain of survival that stretches across generations, reminding us that history is built not only by kings and warriors, but by the countless ordinary people whose lives formed the foundation of the world. And now, as the last embers of the fire fade, and the long journey through a commoner's life in medieval Europe comes to its quiet end, we let the story settle like evening mist over the fields, soft and unhurried, and we breathe with the rhythm of a world that moves slowly, shaped by seasons, shaped by duty, shaped by hands that work the soil from childhood to old age. And we remember the people whose names were never written in books, yet whose lives formed the foundation of everything that came after. We have walked beside them through the cold mornings of youth, through the long days of labor, through the fragile joys of family, through the burdens of responsibility, and through the final years when strength fades but wisdom grows. And now their story rests, carried gently into the quiet of night, a reminder of how ordinary lives can hold extraordinary resilience. The fields they tended now lie still in the darkness. The tools they once held now rest against the walls. The hearth that warmed generations now glows faintly, and the voices of the past drift softly into silence, leaving behind only the echo of footsteps on worn earth and the memory of lives lived with endurance, humility, and quiet strength. And as we step away from their world and return to our own, we carry with us a deeper understanding of the people who came before us, the people who endured hunger and hardship, who loved fiercely, who worked without rest, who aged with dignity, and who faced the end of life with acceptance, knowing that their story would continue in the hands of those who followed. Now the night grows deeper, the air grows still, and the story gently closes its eyes, settling into the soft darkness like a final breath. And you, listening here in the quiet, can let your own thoughts drift, slow and peaceful, carried by the calm of a world long gone. The journey is finished now. The tale has been told, and the voices of the past have grown silent, leaving only calm, only stillness, only rest. So breathe softly. Let the weight of the day fall away, and allow sleep to come to you as gently as the closing of this story. Good night, and may your dreams be peaceful, warm, and kind.